My name is Rebecca Morgan, I'm 34 years old, and exactly 3 years after my sister told me I'd never amount to anything, she unknowingly submitted a rental application for the penthouse I own. The irony hit me at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning when my property manager forwarded me the application with a note, "Applicant seems desperate. Credit score is 580. Should I proceed?" I stared at the name on the document, Jennifer Morgan, and felt something between vindication and profound sadness settle in my chest. The application listed her current income as $73,000 annually, barely enough to qualify for the $8,500 monthly rent. She'd attached a letter explaining recent financial hardships, divorce proceedings, and a promise to be the perfect tenant. What she didn't know was that I'd purchased the entire building 18 months ago as part of my real estate portfolio expansion. What she definitely didn't know was that her little sister, the one she'd mocked relentlessly for 10 years, was reading every word of her desperate plea. My phone buzzed with exactly 47 text messages by noon that day, all from family members who'd somehow learned about Jennifer's application. Mom's message read, "Please don't embarrass your sister. Family comes first." My Aunt Carol chimed in, "This could be a blessing in disguise for both of you." Before I explain what happened next, let me know where you're viewing from and hit subscribe if you've ever been told you weren't good enough by the very people who should have believed in you most. To really understand why that rental application felt like cosmic justice, you'd have to go back 7 years to when Jennifer was the golden child and I was the family disappointment. We grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house in Tacoma, Washington, where success was measured by your degree, your marriage, and your zip code. Jennifer checked every box that mattered to our parents. Stanford MBA at 25, married to Richard, a surgeon, by 27, living in a 3,200 square foot home in Bellevue's most prestigious neighborhood by 30. I took a different path entirely. I graduated from community college with an associate's degree in business administration, worked 3 jobs simultaneously to save money, and lived in a 400 square foot studio apartment that Jennifer once described as basically a closet with plumbing. She wasn't wrong about the size, but her tone when she said it, dripping with condescension, made it clear she thought my living situation reflected my worth as a person. The first time she openly mocked my ambitions was at Thanksgiving dinner 6 years ago. I just closed on my first investment property, a small duplex in a transitional neighborhood that needed substantial work. I was excited, proud even, and made the mistake of sharing my accomplishment with the family. Jennifer laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, dismissive laugh that made everyone at the table uncomfortable. "Real estate investing," she said, using air quotes with her perfectly manicured fingers. "That's what people call it when they can't afford to actually live somewhere nice, so they buy the places nobody else wants." Richard nodded along, smirking into his wine glass. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably, but said nothing in my defense. My mother changed the subject to Jennifer's recent promotion at her consulting firm. That duplex, the one she'd mocked, generated $2,400 monthly in rental income after all expenses. It was my first step toward financial independence, but to Jennifer, it was proof of my limited thinking. The second time she drew blood was at my 30th birthday party, which I held at a modest restaurant because I was channeling every spare dollar into my second property purchase. Jennifer arrived 45 minutes late, made a show of looking around the casual venue, and announced loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is cute, Rebecca. Very budget-conscious." She just returned from a 2-week vacation in Santorini and spent most of dinner showing photos of her infinity pool overlooking the Mediterranean while I served cake on paper plates. "You should really invest in yourself more," she told me over dessert, her tone suggesting she was offering sincere advice. "Stop living like a college student. You're 30 years old." My friend Marcus, who'd been my college roommate and witnessed years of Jennifer's behavior, pulled me aside that night. "You know she's intimidated by you, right?" he said quietly. I laughed at the absurdity. How could someone living in a mansion, driving a BMW, married to a surgeon possibly be intimidated by me? "Because you're building something that doesn't depend on anyone else," Marcus explained. "Her entire identity is tied to Richard's income and her parents' approval. You're creating your own foundation. That terrifies people like her. I didn't fully believe him then, but his words stayed with me through the subsequent months and years of quiet grinding. While Jennifer posted Instagram stories of luxury brunches and designer shopping trips, I was meeting with contractors at 6 a.m., learning how to read rental market data, and eating dinner from Tupperware containers between property showings. The final conversation before our 3-year silence happened at my parents' anniversary party. I just purchased my fourth property, a small apartment building with 8 units that required significant renovation. The deal had stretched me financially, but the numbers were solid, and I knew the neighborhood was about to boom based on city development plans I'd researched. Jennifer cornered me in the kitchen while I was refilling the ice bucket. She'd had 3 glasses of champagne, and her filter was gone. "Mom's worried about you," she said without preamble. "We all are. You're 31 years old, Rebecca. Still single, still living in that sad little apartment, playing landlord to deadbeats. When are you going to get a real career? When are you going to stop embarrassing this family?" The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my face neutral, my voice steady. "I'm building a business," I said simply. "I own 4 properties now, all cash-flowing positive." "4 properties in terrible neighborhoods," she shot back. "You think you're some kind of real estate mogul, but you're just a slumlord collecting rent from people who can't do better. You'll never own a real home, Rebecca. You'll never have what Richard and I have. You're playing a game you don't understand with money you can't afford to lose." Something fundamental cracked inside me in that moment. Not my confidence in my plan. That remained intact. What broke was the last thread of hope that my sister might ever see me as an equal, might ever respect the path I'd chosen. I set down the ice bucket carefully and looked her directly in the eyes. "We'll see," I said quietly. Then I left the party without saying goodbye to anyone. That was the last time we spoke for 3 years, 1 month, and 12 days. I blocked her number, unfollowed her on social media, and declined every family gathering where I knew she'd be present. My parents were hurt, confused, but I held firm to my boundaries. "When she apologizes," I told them, "we can talk about rebuilding a relationship. Until then, I need distance from her toxicity." The silence from my family was deafening at first, then slowly transformed into sporadic updates I didn't ask for. Jennifer got pregnant, had a daughter named Sophie, went back to work at the consulting firm after maternity leave. Richard took on more hospital shifts to support their lifestyle. Their marriage, according to whispered phone calls from my mother, was going through a rough patch, which I translated as financial stress disguised as compatibility issues. Meanwhile, I was building an empire in silence. Property 5 was a triplex that I renovated and rented to young professionals. Properties 6 and 7 were single-family homes in neighborhoods where I predicted gentrification. By year 2 of our silence, I owned 12 rental units generating $19,700 monthly in net income. By year 3, I'd formed an LLC, hired a property manager named Patricia, and purchased my first commercial property, a mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor and apartments above. The penthouse I ultimately purchased wasn't part of my original plan. It was an impulse born from accumulated vindication, a statement I didn't need to make but wanted to anyway. The building sat in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, newly renovated, with panoramic views of the city and Puget Sound. The penthouse unit occupied the entire top floor, 2,800 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a rooftop terrace that made my breath catch the first time I saw it. The asking price was $3.8 million, more than I'd ever spent on a single property. My portfolio was worth approximately $8.2 million by then, but most of my capital was tied up in rental properties. Patricia thought I was crazy when I told her I wanted to buy the entire building, not just the penthouse. "That's a $12 million purchase," she said carefully. "Do you have that kind of capital?" It took 4 months to structure the deal, but I closed on the building for $11.4 million with a combination of conventional financing, private money, and a seller carryback note. The penthouse I kept for myself, my first and only personal residence purchase. The remaining 11 units I rented out at market rates that more than covered my debt service. The day I received the keys, exactly 2 years and 7 months after Jennifer told me I'd never own a home, I stood on that rooftop terrace and cried. Marcus came to visit the week I moved in, bringing champagne and Chinese takeout. "Remember when she said you were playing a game you didn't understand?" he asked, looking around the penthouse in genuine awe. This is what understanding the game actually looks like. What I didn't know was that Jennifer's rough patch had evolved into something much darker. Richard had been hiding a gambling addiction that had incinerated most of their savings and maxed out their credit cards. The Bellevue house was already in pre-foreclosure when Jennifer finally admitted to our parents that she needed help. The divorce that followed was brutal, public, and expensive in ways that had nothing to do with attorney fees. She'd been downsized from the firm during a round of layoffs, then struggled to find equivalent work in a contracting market. The nanny was gone, the BMW was returned to the dealership, and according to my mother's increasingly worried phone calls, Jennifer was really struggling and needed family support during this difficult time. The rental application landed on Patricia's desk on a Tuesday morning. Patricia forwarded it to me as she did with all applications, unaware of the family connection. Jennifer Morgan, the application read. Currently employed at Deloitte, annual income $73,000. Excellent references from previous landlord. Seeking 2-bedroom unit, willing to sign 18-month lease. Has 1 dependent child, age 3. I read the entire application 3 times before the full irony crystallized. She was applying to live in my building. Not just any unit. She'd requested one of the nicer 2 bedrooms on the 8th floor, the one with the balcony overlooking Pike Place Market. She'd written a cover letter explaining her recent divorce, her commitment to being a reliable tenant, her desperate need for stability for her daughter. And she had no idea, absolutely no idea, that her little sister owned the building. Patricia called me 20 minutes after sending the application. "Rebecca, I need your approval on this one. The credit score is concerning, but her income barely qualifies her, and she's offered to pay 3 months upfront as security. What do you want me to do?" I sat in my office, staring at Jennifer's signature on the application, and felt the weight of 3 years of silence pressing down on my chest. "Give me until tomorrow," I told Patricia. "I need to think about this." I spent that evening on my rooftop terrace, watching the city lights flicker on as darkness settled over Seattle. I called Marcus, who listened to the entire situation without interrupting. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. Not what I should do, not what would look good to the family. What did I want? "I want her to know," I admitted. "I want her to understand that the person she dismissed, the life she mocked, became something she now desperately needs." "Is that terrible? Does that make me vindictive?" "It makes you human," Marcus said. "You're not denying her housing out of spite. You're considering whether renting to her would actually help her or just enable the same pattern of taking without appreciation." By morning, I'd made my decision. I called Patricia and told her to schedule a standard tenant interview. "I'll conduct it personally," I said. "And Patricia, don't tell her I'm the owner. Just say the owner wants to meet all prospective tenants personally." The interview was scheduled for Friday at 3 p.m. in the building's rental office. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing business casual attire and my game face. My heart hammered in my chest, but my hands were steady. Patricia greeted me with a nervous smile, clearly curious about why I was handling this interview personally. "She should be here any minute," Patricia said. And then, at exactly 3:02 p.m., Jennifer walked through the door. She looked different than I remembered, though only 3 years had passed. Her hair was shorter, less meticulously styled. She wore a professional outfit that was nice but not designer, and she carried Sophie, a beautiful 3-year-old with Jennifer's dark eyes, on her hip. She was scanning the waiting area when her eyes landed on me sitting behind the desk. The recognition was instant, and her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally something that looked like dread. Rebecca. Her voice cracked on my name. Sophie looked at me with curious, innocent eyes, oblivious to the tension that had instantly filled the room. I stood up slowly, maintaining eye contact, my professional smile firmly in place. Hello, Jennifer. Please, have a seat. I understand you're interested in the unit on the 8th floor. She didn't move. She just stood there, still clutching Sophie, her mouth slightly open. Patricia looked between us, clearly sensing the undercurrent but not understanding its source. I didn't know, Jennifer stammered. The listing didn't say. I had no idea that I own this building? I finished for her, my voice calm. No, I suppose you wouldn't have known that. I tend to keep my business ventures private. Please, sit down. We should discuss your application. Jennifer lowered herself into the chair mechanically, settling Sophie on her lap. The little girl immediately began playing with her mother's necklace, chattering softly. I pulled up Jennifer's application on my tablet, taking my time, letting the silence stretch. So, I began, my tone purely professional. Your application indicates you're recently divorced and seeking a stable living situation for you and your daughter. Can you tell me more about your current housing situation? Jennifer's eyes were filling with tears, but she fought to maintain composure in front of Sophie. I'm renting a house month to month, she said quietly. The owners want to move back in, so I have to leave by the end of next month. I've been looking for something in my price range that's also in a good school district. She paused, then added almost desperately, I can afford this place, Rebecca. I know my credit isn't perfect right now, but I can pay. I have first month, last month, and a security deposit ready. Your credit score is 580, I said, reading from the application. That's significantly below our typical requirements of 650 or higher. Can you explain what happened? She flinched at the number, at the clinical way I'd stated it. Richard, she said simply. He ran up our cards without telling me. When everything came out, my credit was destroyed by association. I'm working on rebuilding it, but it takes time. I've never missed a rent payment, Rebecca. Never. My previous landlord can vouch for that. I nodded, making notes on my tablet, though I was mostly buying time to process the surreal situation. Here was my sister, the one who told me I'd never amount to anything, sitting across from me begging for approval to rent a property in the building I owned. Tell me about your job, I said. The application lists Deloitte, but I know they had significant layoffs 6 months ago. What's your current status there? Jennifer's face crumpled slightly. I was laid off, she admitted. The $73,000 is from a contract position I just started. It's not permanent yet, but they've indicated it might convert to full-time after 6 months. I know that's not ideal, but it's stable for now, and I'm good at what I do. I'll find something permanent. The desperation in her voice was palpable, and I felt something twist in my chest. This wasn't the confident, condescending sister I remembered. This was someone who'd been humbled by life in ways I'd never wished on her. Why this building specifically? I asked. She looked me directly in the eyes for the first time since sitting down. Because it's in a good neighborhood, she said honestly. Because the schools are excellent. Because I want Sophie to grow up somewhere stable and safe. Because... She hesitated, then continued, because I saw the units online and they're beautiful, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could give my daughter something nice, even if I can't give her everything I'd planned. The admission hung in the air between us. Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her corner, pretending to organize paperwork. Sophie started squirming, wanting down, and Jennifer set her gently on the floor with a quiet warning to stay close. I'm going to be direct with you, Jennifer, I said, leaning forward slightly. We have a complicated history. 3 years ago, you told me I'd never own a home, that I was embarrassing the family with my life choices. You mocked my career path, my living situation, my ambitions. And now you're sitting here asking me to approve your rental application for a unit in the building I own.
Do you see the irony?
She closed her eyes, and tears finally spilled over onto her cheeks. I see it, she whispered. God, Rebecca, I see it. And I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I was horrible to you. I was cruel and dismissive, and I said things I can never take back. I was so focused on looking successful that I couldn't see what you were actually building. I couldn't see that you were doing something incredible while I was just performing. Sophie toddled back to her mother, sensing distress, and Jennifer pulled her close, burying her face briefly in her daughter's hair. I'm not telling you this to punish you, I said, my voice softer now. I'm saying it because if you live here, our relationship will be landlord-tenant, which is inherently unequal. I need to know that you can handle that power dynamic, given our history. I need to know that you won't resent me for succeeding where you predicted I'd fail. Jennifer nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. I already resent myself enough for both of us, she said with brutal honesty. What you've built, Rebecca, it's remarkable. And I was too blind and jealous to see it when it mattered. If you can find it in yourself to rent to me, I promise I'll be a model tenant. Not because you're my sister, but because I genuinely need this, and because I owe you more than an apology. Patricia chose that moment to interrupt. Rebecca, I'm sorry, but I have another showing in 10 minutes. Do you need more time, or? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone fundamentally changed by the consequences of her choices. I saw someone who'd learned expensive lessons about humility and reality. But I also saw someone who hadn't actually apologized yet, who'd acknowledged wrongdoing but hadn't taken full accountability for the specific harm she'd caused. Jennifer, I said carefully, before I make any decision, I need to hear you say it. Not the vague acknowledgement, but the actual apology for the specific things you said and did. I need to know you understand why your words hurt, not just that they did hurt. She took a shaky breath, settling Sophie more firmly on her lap. You're right, she said. Rebecca, I'm sorry for telling you that you'd never own a home. I'm sorry for mocking your investment properties and calling you a slumlord. I'm sorry for dismissing your ambitions and implying that you were an embarrassment to the family. I said those things because I felt threatened by your independence, by the fact that you were building something that didn't depend on a husband's income or parental approval. I was projecting my own insecurities onto you, and that was wrong. You deserved support and encouragement, and I gave you cruelty instead. I'm genuinely sorry. The apology landed with more weight than I'd expected. It wasn't perfect, no apology ever is, but it was real, specific, and came from a place of actual understanding rather than just desperation. I closed my laptop slowly, thinking, I'll approve your application, I said finally. With conditions. Her eyes widened with hope. Anything, she said quickly. Whatever you need. First, I continued, you'll pay the standard first month, last month, and security deposit. No special treatment, no family discount. This is a business arrangement, not a favor. Second, we maintain appropriate boundaries. I'm your landlord, not your sister, when it comes to building matters. Rent is due on the 1st, late fees apply on the 6th, and house rules are in the lease. Third, and most important, we start fresh with our personal relationship if you want one at all. That means regular, honest conversations, not just when you need something. Jennifer nodded eagerly, new tears streaming down her face. Yes, she said. Yes to all of it. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Patricia printed out the lease documents, and I watched Jennifer sign them with shaking hands, Sophie now asleep on her shoulder. When she stood to leave, she paused at the door. I know this doesn't fix everything, she said quietly. But I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, proving that I can be the sister you deserved all along. Just be a good tenant and a good person, I replied. That's all I need from you right now. The first 3 months of Jennifer's tenancy were surreal. She paid rent exactly on time, submitted maintenance requests through the proper channels, and kept the apartment immaculate. We saw each other occasionally in the building, in the elevator, in the parking garage, once in the lobby when she was collecting a package. Our interactions were cordial but careful, like two people learning a new dance. Then one evening, about 4 months after she moved in, I found a note slipped under my penthouse door. It was from Jennifer, written in her distinctive handwriting. Rebecca, Sophie and I are making cookies tomorrow afternoon. Would you like to join us? No pressure if you're busy or not ready. But the offer stands. J. I showed up at her door the next afternoon with a bottle of wine and a willingness to try. Sophie answered the door with chocolate on her face, squealing, "Auntie Rebecca," with the unself-conscious joy of a 3-year-old who didn't carry the baggage of adult complications. Jennifer's apartment was modest by her previous standards, but warm and lived in. Photos of Sophie covered the fridge, and I noticed she'd hung one of our childhood pictures, the two of us at the beach, before success and failure became the measures by which we judged each other. We baked cookies, talked carefully about safe topics, and played with Sophie until she fell asleep on the couch between us. "This is nice," Jennifer said softly, looking down at her sleeping daughter. "Normal." I'd forgotten what normal felt like. "It is nice," I agreed. And in that moment, sitting in the apartment I owned in the building I'd purchased with money earned from investments she'd once mocked, I felt something I hadn't felt toward my sister in years: hope. Over the following months, we built a new relationship on top of the ruins of the old one. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when old resentments flared, when I had to remind myself that people can change, that growth is possible even when it comes late. Jennifer proved herself not just as a tenant but as a sister. She helped me screen new rental applications during a busy season, offered insights into marketing strategies for my properties, and slowly earned back my trust through consistent actions rather than empty promises. The most surprising development came 18 months after she moved in. Jennifer's contract position had converted to full-time with a significant raise, bringing her salary to $96,000 annually. Her credit score had climbed back to 680 through careful financial management and time. She approached me one evening with a business proposal. She wanted to invest in one of my upcoming property purchases as a limited partner, putting in $50,000 she'd saved. "I want to learn what you know," she said earnestly. "Not to compete with you or prove anything to anyone else, but because I finally understand that building wealth is different from looking wealthy. And I want Sophie to grow up understanding that too, to have a mother who models financial intelligence instead of financial performance." I considered her proposal seriously, discussed it with Marcus and my business attorney, and ultimately agreed. We structured it carefully, with clear terms and professional boundaries. But having Jennifer as a business partner, even in a limited capacity, felt like closing a circle that had been broken for so long. Today, 3 years after she unknowingly applied to rent my penthouse, Jennifer is still my tenant in that 8th-floor apartment. But she's also become my friend, my business partner on 2 investment properties, and most surprisingly, someone I genuinely trust. Our parents are relieved and happy that we've reconciled, though they don't fully understand the journey it took to get here. I still own the penthouse, still live in the building where my sister pays me rent every month. Some people might find that dynamic weird or uncomfortable, but for us, it works. It's a daily reminder of how far we've both come. Me from the girl in the 400-square-foot studio who was told she'd never amount to anything, her from the woman who said those words and lost herself in the process of trying to look successful. The most profound lesson I learned through all of this isn't about real estate investing or building wealth, though those skills have certainly changed my life. It's about the difference between being right and being free. I could have rejected Jennifer's application out of spite, could have savored the vindication of denying her what she once claimed I'd never have. That would have made me right, justifiably right, but it would have kept me chained to the hurt she'd caused. By choosing to approve her application, by creating space for growth and change, I freed both of us from those old patterns. I'm no longer the little sister seeking approval, and she's no longer the big sister wielding conditional love as a weapon. We're two adults learning how to be family on our own terms, defined by mutual respect rather than ancient hierarchies. Have you ever been underestimated by family members who later needed your help? How did you handle the opportunity to either prove your point or extend grace? Share your story in the comments below. I read every one and learn from your experiences. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something so solid that other people's opinions simply stop mattering.